Hello, dear friends. This is Cardiac Radio at 11 p.m., nourishing our souls together. We are here to study one more chapter of this book, Jesus in the Home. This book was written by Neio Lucio through the medium Chico Xavier in 1949. What is important for us to note is that this book comes to us as a report of actual encounters between Jesus, disciples, and people at large. In Peter's home, and everybody who came along to cherish those sacred moments of wisdom. So, today we're going to study chapter 31, the reason for pain. Who doesn't feel pain in this world? Leon Denis writes in the book After Death about pain, and he says, pain is law in this world. How so? You know, it's interesting when you take science and study about pain. I am a neuroscientist myself, and for the longest time I've researched on pain, and it's quite interesting because we learn that pain has different components, and one of the components is the affective component. Okay, so pain is not an objective perception. No, it depends on the colors of the ones who are experiencing it. So what we call the affective component of pain is when we give the colors of it. In Buddhism, there is a distinction between suffering and pain. And besides the philosophy behind it, Spiritism takes the route with Jesus to understand that there are afflictions, and afflictions is a different thing. It's the color that we give. So are we saying that it's possible to come around it and get something positive from it? Yes. How so? Jesus is gonna tell us this. Okay? So are you ready for this? Are you ready? Because we're going to start reading the very chapter, probably one of the most meaningful chapters, because it talks about our everyday life. It's very hard not to go through a day without experiencing some form of affliction, whether minor or major. So many people in this world going through it, and yet, why? The very question that many people ask, why me? Why with my loved ones? Why am I not free from it? Right? Chapter 31, the reason for pain. Let's call the master, because only the master has the answer for us. Rachel. So it begins with a woman, Rachel, a long-time servant of Cusa. You remember Joanna of Cusa, the wife of Cusa? Remember? Joanna de Angelis, the spirit mentor of Divaldo Franco, lived in Jesus' time. She was a follower as Joanna of Cusa, the wife of Cusa, right? And Rachel was a friend and a servant in the house. Rachel spoke up in order to ask the master why pain had become such an affliction on the pathways of the world. Whether weren't men and women God's creation? Weren't they entitled to the blessed help of the angels? Didn't heaven watch over the destinies of humankind? Aren't these some of the questions you may ask? You may ask, other people may ask, why? Why? I try my best and yet my family tries their best and yet why? Why? Well, Jesus looked firmly into her eyes and said, the reason behind human pain is divine protection. Okay, I'm going to repeat it. The reason behind human pain is divine protection. Peoples are families of God, and like large flocks of sheep, they are enclosed in the sheepfold of the Most High. The earth is the path. The struggle that teaches and edifies is the way forward. Suffering is the goad that awakens the sheep that are distracted alongside the path of truth. There were a few moments of silence, and the master began again. Begin again. Excessive power favors abuse. Too much comfort frequently brings laxity, and bread that piles up in excess usually becomes food for vermin that take pleasure in the mold. Perceiving that the group of friends was asking him for a fuller explanation, he elaborated fraternally. By order from the Eternal Father, an angel took charge on an ordinary man at birth. He taught him how to feed himself, to move his arms, legs, and muscles, to smile, to rest, and to take refuge in his mother's arms. Without leaving its word side, day and night, it gave him the first lessons of speech, and then guided him to do more things, providing him with the opportunity to learn and think, to read, to write, and to do arithmetic. Hour by hour, the angel kept him from the pernicious or deadly influences of the miserable spirits that would undoubtedly carry him off to the abyss of death. It breathed illumined thoughts into his mind from the light of the infinite good through 1,000 ways of imperceptible aid, ensuring him health and physical balance. It gave him invisible medicine through air and water, clothing and plants. On numerous occasions, it saved him from error, crime, and the unending ills that torment sinners. At dawn, the heavenly page attentively prepared a calm and profitable day for him, watching over his breathing, nourishment, and thought, and guarding his steps with love in order to best conserve his gifts. At dusk, the angel watched at the head of his bed, safeguarding his body against the attack of infernal spirits, watching over him with a mother's care, with sweet and spiritual instructions while he was asleep. Throughout his life, it guided his ideas, helped him to choose his emotions, and to find a worthy and respectable job. It enlightened his mind, breathed holy enthusiasm into him for the pathway of the superior life, and encouraged him to establish a realm of blessing and service, progress, and spiritual growth in a home. However, the man who had never thought to give thanks for the blessings surrounding him became proud, cruel towards others. He who had been given such great blessings from heaven never felt the urge to extend them on earth, and began to humiliate others with the glory with which he had been clothed by his devout and invisible benefactor. When he experienced his first disappointment, which he himself caused by belittling the law of universal love that establishes fraternity and respect for others, he made a gesture of rebelliousness against heaven, accusing the Supreme Lord of being unjust and indifferent. Deeply hurt, the guardian angel was trying to impress him with the ideal of kindness when a higher angel came down and ordered the first annoyance of the ward, hardened by the excess of privileges, to be turned into affliction. Rolling mentally from one affliction to the next, the man began to reap the qualities of patience, humility, love, and peace with all, thus making him the Father's invaluable co-worker in creation. When he had finished, Jesus expected Rachel to raise some type of question, but the servant was mute, dominated by the thoughts that evening's teachings had suggested. The gospel worship came to a close with a meaningful prayer of inexpressible joy. Before we go through the content, think about the context, because it matters. A servant comes and asks Jesus a question about afflictions, the reasons why we go through afflictions, pains. Now, let us ponder. She was a servant, a long time servant in some Roman's home. What did that mean? Was their life easy? No. They didn't have microwave. They didn't have vacuum cleaner. They didn't have washer and dryer. Life was very rough at the time. Rougher than nowadays. It was very labor intensive. Very difficult. Imagine for a woman. A woman, usually the healthy woman, commonly has a monthly period. And we all know that no matter how healthy you are, it's not easy peasy. It's a delicate process. Sometimes I tell people, you complain about having a period? Don't. You know why? It's a blessing from God. It's when God is saying, give yourself a break, women. You know what? Rest more. I'm not kidding. God is great because God knows that people abuse women in general, because women are always right there giving. And then God says, I'm going to give you a monthly thing, so you take care of yourself for at least a week of a month. So you can, we wish, right? It could be like that. But we tell people, take your time. Enjoy that feminine in you. And you should go easy on yourself. Don't try to be and to do everything, because your vase is sacred. Is the one that is going to bear life. So, treat yourself with kindness. But in spite of that parenthesis that we open, we want to share. Rachel comes here as a woman, and it's not by chance that a woman is asking this question. And I'm not making a feminist approach here, but it's a realistic approach. In several books, we read in Spiritism about the reality that men and women have particular roles and tasks to be fulfilled. Equal rights, but different tasks. And in spite of it all, we understand that historically there is a form of abuse, violence against women, So much so that Jesus, as reported in the book Good News, Jesus says to Peter, Peter, most often men are weak and women are always sufferers, always. And it's valid to date, because you have to stretch yourself to do 10,000 things to catch up on the same rights in our society, if we get there. And we're not talking about even jobs. We're talking about sharing chores at home, responsibilities raising kids. So it wasn't different in Jesus' time. It was even worse for women back then. So it's not by chance that Neio Lucio is reporting to us of 10,000 scenarios he could report. In this book, he's reporting 50 cases, 50 scenarios. 50 scenarios in many that he probably watched regarding Jesus' life. And of course, this book comes out after being peer-reviewed by illuminated entities that are coordinating and orchestrating the Spiritist movement on earth. And they say, yeah, these are the ones that shall be published and brought to life to the general public. And this one talks about pain, and it comes with a question from a woman who is a servant. It doesn't come from Joanna of Cusa. It comes from her servant. So in that, we find already the pain that she's experiencing herself. She's not asking a question because she's a scholar. No, she's asking because she's experiencing it. No wonder Neio Lucio reports to us the beauty of this moment. Rachel, a longtime servant of Cusa, spoke up in order to ask the master why pain had become such an affliction on the pathways to the world. So, it's nothing to do with feminism. It's about life. The feminine in us needs to be respected, and we need to be less aggressive. Sometimes the aggression is such that even men, they have to tough it up and overshadow the feminine inside to put up with, or to really stand up tall before the aggressions of the world. But we're coming to a time in the 21st century, almost at the end of the second decade, in which we're more than ever being called to redefine this feminine in us and allow it to go through. The feminine compromises, the feminine understands, the feminine is compassionate, the feminine, it has intuition, the feminine is this caregiver inside of all of us. Rachel comes as the expression of the feminine inside of men and women around the world that is feeling crushed and oppressed and repressed. And as we suffer, we're anguished. We feel like it's never our turn, right? We feel like no matter how hard we try, life doesn't give us a true opportunity. And Jesus replies to her and to all of us that oppressed feminine in us, the suffering part of all of us, comes and says firmly. So you see, the balanced masculine firmness comes to the rescue of that wounded feminine inside of us. We all have it. But the firmness of the Christ shall heal us. the first sentence Jesus says with that balanced and very harmonic masculine is looking in the eyes, and we know that the eyes is the door to the soul, so deeply entering with firmness and saying, I'm coming here to your rescue. First thing that he says, the reason behind human pain is divine protection. And we're like, but Master, what do you mean? Pain is divine protection? How so? You're afflicted. You're suffering. It's protection. Before we go to the psychological part of it, let's go to our biology. So for example, I take my finger and put on a hot surface. What is happening to my body? If I don't feel anything, it's gonna burn my finger. That's bad for survival, right? But God is so good. Jesus is so wise. He knows that we need a sign of alarm. We call it pain. In neuroscience, especially the American Pain Society, which is a group of scientists in the United States that study pain, they propose pain as another sense of our body. Why? Because this noxious stimulation that comes in, like heat, fire, extreme cold, can be detrimental to the survival of the body. So we have nerve endings, receptors, and they travel through our peripheral nervous system, enter cranial nerves, and tell us, alarm, something is off, and the brain replies, withdraw your hand or else, and we do, quickly, bam. When you have diabetes, you may have some form of, you lose that perception, that's bad for you. So Jesus is right. Physiologically, pain is divine protection for the survival of our life. Physically. What about psychologically, spiritually? Yes, pain is an alarm system. We can no longer complain. Something is off. Instead of saying, oh my gosh, why am I withdrawing my hand? Why is this burning me? Well, thank God my body is sending a message saying, be careful, don't go there. For you and I, Jesus is saying, that is a mechanism of protection. So tonight, we're learning that pain is like an alarm system. It hurts. We need to ask a question like Louise Hay used to teach. Before you shoo away the things that are bothering you, ask yourself, what is the lesson? Before we shoo away a disease, complaining about it, we need to ask the disease and the situations that are painful in our lives. You are my teacher now. Tell me what I need to learn. Is it hard? Maybe, but it's going to be much easier if we face it. We face it. And ask the question, why is this bothering me so much? There is something inside of us, a sign. And Jesus comes to us and says more. He says to this woman, excessive power favors abuse. Why is he saying this? No, she's a servant. Is he being mean to her? No. He's saying, today, we're servants because yesterday we abused power. Just a second, friends. Não pode falar nada, tá bom? Okay. Somebody woke up and wants mommy, right? Okay, this is Virginia, so stay here, okay? You should be sleeping. Okay? All right, friends, thank you for waiting. So, here, do you think Jesus was being mean by telling a servant that when we have excessive power, we abuse it? No. He was teaching a lesson. He was saying, we better learn the lesson, or we are always going to have to repeat the experiences in order to learn it. We can't abuse power. The other thing he says, too much comfort brings laxity. So he's telling her, now you're a servant, labor intensive in previous lives. We probably didn't work hard enough. Then too much food, it's gonna go to waste. Isn't that funny that he's saying precisely these words to a servant? He's not being mean. He's being a truthful master. Right, friends? So then he tells us the story fraternally of this angel who takes care of a child until the child is raised like a mother. But then this adult is ungrateful, takes for granted everything, until a higher angel comes and says, can you allow them to experience, this person to experience frustrations? Parenthesis here. Nowadays, many of the problems in education happen because we do not allow our children to go through the frustrations in life. We don't. Right? We're always and constantly trying to spoon feed our children, and then they don't grow strong muscles. So at the end of this, Jesus is kindly teaching us that we need to redefine pain. So afflictions have a meaning, right? Afflictions have a meaning. And if we learn it, we breathe in and out and say, I can handle it. It's okay. it shall pass. As soon as I learn it, I will experience something new. So for all of us tonight, we're being asked to be fully aware in the next 24 hours. We would say our homework is to give a new meaning to what we call suffering and affliction. Because once we learn that it's divine protection, that it's an alarm sign, we will make better use of that situation and overcome it more easily. So friends, how about if we raise our thoughts in gratitude and say, thank you so much, Master, for being so firm and yet fraternal, for being so attentive to our needs of clarification, and for your loving proposal, encouraging us to stay strong and keep on working with wisdom to wiser decisions in our lives. We thank you and we ask for your blessings, especially to those who are in greater need than ourselves. May the mercy of God be felt by all of us today and tomorrow, and so be it. Thank you, friends. A big kiss. Can you say bye?
Bye.
Bye. See you tomorrow, friends.